On today's Author Show and Tell, we have best-selling author of dark fiction Lee Murray. Stick around. Welcome back to another episode of Horror Author Show and Tell, everybody. I'm Gaby Triana. I'm the best-selling author of the Haunted Florida series, Moonchild, Paradise Island, a Sam and Colby story, and lots more. Today we'll be hearing from best-selling author of dark fiction, military horror, Lee Murray, whose books include Into the Mist, Grotesque Monster Stories, Black Cranes, Tales of Unquiet Women, and lots more. She's here to show you something that's very interesting and an integral part of her book Into the Mist, and I found it really fascinating, and I know you will too, but I will let her tell you. Take it away, Lee.
Hello everyone, and thank you, Gaby, for inviting me to your Horror Show and Tell. Congratulations on the release of Moonchild. Lovely, spooky little read. I really enjoyed it. And today, the object I'm going to talk about is the bull roarer, or purerehua. It looks a little bit like this. I have one that I've prepared earlier. This is it here. It's a musical instrument. It's made of wood and has this lozenge shape usually. These notches quite often, and occasionally you'll find them carved with beautiful kōrero or tribal carvings. Sometimes they have personal significance, and the symbols often tell a story. And then they also have this piece of string. Right, so this particular instrument was made for me by a young friend called Ernesto Mejia, who read Into the Mist and really enjoyed it, so he made me this musical instrument. Now, to play it, you let the string out and then you spin it sort of kind of either sideways or above your head in a sort of big circle. And of course, the sound is different depending on how fast you whirl it or and the size of the circle, that kind of thing. And it's said to attract insects because it has a sound a little bit like fly or some kind of flying insect, which of course would naturally attract a lizard or a gecko or some other creature like that. So it's an important element in my novel Into the Mist. This is Into the Mist here. I've just been putting the string back on mine. Into the Mist here, which involves one of our local mythological creatures, which is a serpent lizard creature called a taniwha. But in my particular story, I also postulated that it might be a tuatara, which is a kind of lizardy creature, except it's not a lizard, that lives only here in New Zealand. The tuatara, in fact, if you think about lizards and crocodiles and alligators and snakes, they all live on the same family, if you like, of organisms. But the tuatara has its own prong. So it's unique in the world and lives only here in New Zealand. It's kind of a living fossil, if you like. So in my story, Into the Mist, my hero, Taine McKenna, is a New Zealand Defence Force sergeant, and he takes a group into the forest, and they come up against this monster, and they have to obviously overcome it in some way. So that's all very interesting, but where does the purerehua come into all of this? And the reason is because Taine McKenna is a very powerful seer or matakite who uses the purerehua to speak to the gods and the spirits and also the monster himself. And that's because our Maori people believe that these instruments connect us to the mountains, to the water, and also to the spirits or the wairoa of our ancestors. And so you can imagine these playing these instruments connects the users to the spirit world and offer an opportunity or a conduit to speak between the living and the dead. And that's what makes it a little bit haunted. So I was hoping to read to you today from Into the Mist, a little excerpt. Where's the book here? And the particular excerpt I've chosen tells a little bit about this object. It's a section of the story which is actually between Temera, who is my hero in the military horror, is Tain, but his matua, his mentor, is Temera. And this particular scene takes place between Temera, the mentor, and his own mentor, Mātuarata. Anyway, hopefully it will make sense when I read it. So, Temera was 11. It was the summer holidays, and he and his Mātuarata had climbed the narrow track to the top of a nearby hill and sat in a clearing in the trees looking over the valley. It had taken them a long time to get there because the day was hot and Mata was old. So old, years of learning were fixed in the wrinkles of his skin, like the words in a book or the rings of a tree. At the summit, Temera sat on his haunches while he waited for his mentor to catch his breath and consider the topic for the day's lesson. To pass the time, he took a stick and drew a picture in the dust, a World War II Spitfire. But when it was time for the lesson, Matua wiped a bony finger through the wings and tail of Temera's aircraft, leaving just the fuselage shape, which he then embellished with swirly patterns, the kind you see on meeting houses. Looks like a torpedo, Temera said. Huh, Matua grunted. It's much stronger than a torpedo. No way. Much, much stronger. Can it blow up a submarine? Hush, sometimes you talk a load of rubbish. This is a purerehua, a musical instrument. A musical instrument? How can a musical instrument be stronger than a torpedo, Matua? Because the purerehua is infused with powerful magic, Matua said. What sort of magic? Old magic. This time it was Temera's turn to grunt. Picking up a little stone, he threw it over the ridge. The pebble rattled through the foliage on its way down the hill until eventually it fell quiet. Matua lit a cigarette, passing it to Temera before lighting another for himself. For a time they puffed contentedly together, the boy and his teacher. The cigarette half smoked, Matua stubbed it out on the ground and put the butt in his pocket. He said, Purerehua are powerful enough to connect a person's wairua, his spirit, with others in the physical world. Temera reflected on that. You mean like seeing ghosts? But when I follow the mōpoka in my sleep, that's my wairua travelling, right? My spirit travelling, not my body. My wairua has a message in that dream place, and I have to come back to my physical body to warn people about what's going to happen. That's how it works. Not always. A purerehua like this one can serve as a conduit through which spirit and an earthly body can talk directly. A conduit. A passage. Like a telephone, maybe. So this musical instrument lets my wairua talk to people. It's not exactly words. Temera frowned. This lesson was so confusing. That doesn't make sense. How can they talk if they don't talk? Some kind of telepathy? I don't know. I'm only telling you what my own matua told me. It isn't the same for all seers. I've never experienced it myself. Then how do you know? Not everything requires proof, Temera. Annoyed, Temera flicked his cigarette butt into the bushes. Matua frowned at that. He didn't approve of littering, said desecrating the bush was the same as shitting in your own bed. So how's it supposed to work? I believe it's in the particular music of the blade, a combination of the instrument's shape, its surface korero, the carvings, and the material itself. These days, purerehua are made of different woods, but in the days of our ancestors, they were made of stone. Even the string instruments String attachment is significant. All these things influence the sound of the music when the musician swings and whirls the instrument. The magic is in the music itself, then, Temra had concluded, pleased with himself. The way it makes you feel. It wasn't so hard now he'd figured it out. Matua smiled. But Temra, you forget about the musician. If you give two guitarists the same guitar, do they make the same music? No, Temra said thoughtfully. What if they play the same tune? Still no. Or how are they different? That's easy. It depends on the musician's skill, or the amount of practice they've had, or their preference for a particular style of music, Temra said proudly. But Matua said nothing, so Temra understood there must be something else. Perhaps the answer has something to do with playing the purerehua, which is swung in the air, and not guitars, which are plucked and strummed. Is it to do with the speed the musician whirls it? Matua shrugged, opened his cigarettes and lit another, shaking the match to extinguish the flame. The size of the circles? Matua looked out over the ridge. He exhaled a cloud of smoke, made it long and slow, so Temra knew he was waiting on an answer. Well, am I even close? Temra said crossly. You're close. Temra huffed, impatient. He lay back on the ground and chewed on his lip. The clouds passed overhead. He was just about to drift off when the answer came to him. He sat up abruptly. It's about the wairua, isn't it? Uh-huh. Is that why they call it soul music? What do you think? I think yes. If you want a song to be meaningful, you have to put your heart into it. I think when a man plays a purerehua, one he's fashioned himself, he puts his soul, his wairua into the performance. He plays it in a way that allows the voice of his spirit to travel through the string, through the blade, through the music. The song becomes like a prayer or a chant, a song of the soul. At that, Matua had cuffed Temra's hair affectionately with the flat of his hand. You know what? I reckon you're not as dumb as you look. Excited, Temra stood up and faced his tutor. People have done this, right? Other seers, they have to have, or what would be the point of the lesson? Not waiting for an answer, Temra spun on his heel, striding away from the old man, only to turn and retrace his steps when he reached the start of the trail. Holy shit! The old man grinned. The purerehua is like a telephone. It's a link between the living and the dead, between the spirit world and the earthly realm. When you told me before, I didn't get it. But it's amazing. The old man nodded. It is, Temra. Can you see now how when used correctly, a purerehua can be more powerful than a torpedo? Yeah. He flapped his arms in the air, letting them slap against his thighs. Cool. After that, Temra had lain on the ground, his hands cradling his head, once again watching the inexorable drift of the clouds. In his ear, Matua continued the lesson, his old voice mellow. As well as being a beautiful object, the purerehua's uses are many. The right man can use it to call forth a soulmate, farewell a loved one, even summon the rain. So, I hope you enjoyed that little message about the purerehua, which is a wonderful object, musical instrument, and also a conduit to the gods. So thank you very much for having me along. It's been lovely to join you, and hope you have a nice day. Bye now.
Wow, Lee, that's a beautiful instrument. The purerehua, it's gorgeous, and I love how you wove it into your story and just made it an integral part of the character's development and of the plot, and how you made it a conduit between this world and that, and brought in a lot of that culture. And I mean, your reading voice is just mesmerizing. I could just sit here all day and listen to you read chapter after chapter. So thank you so much for sharing that. It was absolutely beautiful. I hoped you all loved that too. So guys, go out and check out Into the Mist. I loved the story. And Lee has some new books out as well. Black Cranes, Tales of Unquiet Women, which I haven't read yet, but it's on my to-be-read list. So thank you, Lee, so much for being here, and I will see you all next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.